All right, welcome to lesson one. Let me go over a few housekeeping things. What you're seeing in front of you is the screen that you're going to get to when you log in to lesson one. A few elements of the screen, and these things might change as the class moves on, so don't be terribly shocked if there's some things in different places or what have you. What you have here on the right is your assignment for the week, and as you complete your assignment, you're going to want to check things off and then save it and update it, and it will save your results and it will show that some things are checked. You can see sometimes you might have a link like this for the week one. You want to click this, and it's going to open up the Memory Master's guide that you're going to use for the class. Check things off. I try to specify what day that should be completed on, and that's relative to the class starting on Monday. So, this is day one, day two, day three, etc. All right, so let's go over what we're doing here today. This is the most important lesson because this gives you the framework or the foundation for how we're going to approach unlocking your master memory. And the thing that we need to be aware of is that we talked about DTR, we talked about MIMI. So DTR is decide to remember, MIMI is make it meaningful immediately. And this is memory objects is a way for you to take any information and make it meaningful to your brain immediately. And what's really cool about memory objects is at the beginning they might seem like I'm not even going to say it might. It will seem silly and it will seem like it takes a lot of effort, okay? So as those two ideas come up in your head, this is silly and this is taking a lot of effort. Just be aware that sooner than later, possibly even by the end of this lesson, you are going to be able to turn any fact, any piece of information into a memory object that you are going to be able to store in your brain very quickly, and you'll be able to recall it with shockingly little effort. Okay, now later on in the class, we're going to talk about how to turn numbers into memory objects, so we're not worrying about that much. What we're going to do here is we're going to take three lists of information, one from history, World War II leaders, one from science, elements on the periodic table of elements. This is like the chemical elements that make up everything in the world. And one from math, common math formulas. And what we're going to do is take these lists and we're just going to store them in your brain using memory objects. Now, we're not going to study World War II, and we're not going to learn everything there is to know about these leaders. We're not going to study chemistry and understand what the periodic table is and how the elements are and all that stuff. And I'm not even going to go into what the math formula is for these common math formulas. We're just going to store one piece of information about each one in our brains. And we're going to use memory objects, and you're going to find that tomorrow and the next day and the next day, the memory objects that you took a minute to store in your brain are going to still be there, and they're going to be easy to get to. And if we do the follow-up work, then you're going to lock them in. Next week, we're going to talk about how to add anything that we want to each object. We're going to learn how to connect the objects. The week after that, we're going to learn how to use location to easily store the objects. The week after that, I think we're going to talk about using objects for creating other types of lists. The week after that, we're going to talk about turning numbers into objects. But this is really the key element, is creating visual memory objects that you can see in your head that represent the things that you're trying to remember. So when you DTR, when you decide to remember, you're going to take a piece of information, whether it's a phone number, whether it's a history fact, whether it's a spelling rule, whether it's a vocab word, whatever it is, and you're going to turn it into a memory object in your head, and then you're going to do whatever it is that you want to it to make sure that it has the information that you need. All right? The reason that this works is that our mind is built to visualize, and the eyes are the biggest part, or connect to the biggest part of the brain. So you can, like right now, if I stopped you and I said, visualize your first grade classroom, or visualize the room in your church, or visualize the house that you lived in, or visualize your neighborhood, you could very easily and effortlessly visualize those things. Okay, if I asked you, what's to the right of the sofa in your house. You could stop and you could see it. And even if you just went into a house once, even if you just went into a room once, you sort of take a picture of that room and you're able to remember that very easily and effortlessly. If I told you to visualize right now a scene from a movie that you've seen, you could probably do that because for whatever reason, your eyes and things that you can see or touch, you can store in your brain very, very easily. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through each of these lists, and I'm going to show you how you can quickly and easily turn the item on the list, what I call the DTR item, the decide to remember item. You're going to turn it into a memory object, okay? And then that is going to store itself in your brain, and I'm going to show you how we're going to test that later on. So here's your assignment. Today, the first thing you want to do is download the guide. Then you're going to complete this lesson, which is listening to this video. And then you're going to make up your own memory objects or use the ones that I suggest for these three categories: history, science, and math. Okay? And I'm going to show you how for each one of these, I have suggested ones that I'm going to give you, but you can create your own ones if you want. You might, for this first lesson, just use the ones that I've created as long as, and this is very important, as long as you can see them in your mind. If you can't see them in your mind, if they're not good enough for you, then you have to create your own. And I'm going to show you how to easily and quickly create a memory object. All right? So let's take first a look at our list. The first thing that we're going to do is we're doing World War II leaders. These are the leaders from World War II: Churchill, Stalin, Hirohito, Roosevelt, Hitler, and Mussolini. Okay, if you don't know history, if you haven't studied World War II, and even if you have studied World War II, but you just don't, history's not your thing, then I might have just said those things and they will have disappeared from your brain by the time I move on to the other list. What we're going to do is go over how to quickly and easily turn each one of these things into a memory object that gets stored in your brain. Okay? And as I said, next week we're going to do a lot more with it, but we've got to get the key principle of creating a memory object first. All right, so what else are we going to do? We're going to do elements on the periodic table. Whoops. Move forward here. Oh, let me try that again. We're going to do elements on the periodic table. Again, you may not have studied the periodic table. These are the first 10 elements that are used, that are the things that are used to create everything in the world. So we got hydrogen, helium, lithium, blah, 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 blah. So these are 10 elements. You may know them, you may not know them. But again, if you didn't stop and study them, then they're not going to be stored in your brain. And then the last one that we're going to do are math formulas. These are 10 of the most common math formulas that you might be needing to store in your brain. Again, I'm not going to go over what is the formula for the area of the circle or what is the formula for converting mixed number into fraction. We'll do that next week. I think that's what comes up next week. What I want you to do is I want to be able to say to you at the end of class, what are the common math formulas, and you to be able to recite these 10 to me just easily and effortlessly. All right, let's take a step back. Why do we need to memorize things at all? Well, as you go through school, you're going to need to learn a lot of information, and you're going to be asked to recall that information on assessments. You're going to need to recall it when you're starting to work on assignments. You're going to need to recall it at the end of the class and you're doing exams. But really, you're using your memory all the time. I use these memory objects not so much to remember facts. I use them to remember lists of things that I want to work on. And what's cool about the memory objects is that I can store them in my brain, and then I can stop when I'm out driving or when I'm at the park. I can stop and I can review my list in my brain. And that's really what's powerful about this, is as we store these objects in your brain, you don't have to sit at a table and study history, or sit at a table and study math, or sit at a table and study science. You can review these concepts in your head wherever you want. And you'll see how that works. So let's get started.